Welcome to episode 453. If you've been studying Ayurveda for a while, chances are you already know a lot. You know that sleep matters, routines create balance, and nourishing foods support your well-being. So why is it often so difficult to consistently do the things we know would help us? In this episode, we're exploring the gap between knowing and living Ayurveda, and why transformation requires more than information alone. Welcome to the Elements of Ayurveda podcast. I'm your host, Colette. And if you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend starting with the first few episodes where I introduce the foundations of Ayurveda and the doshas. To learn more, work with me, or explore my offerings, you can visit elementshealingandwellbeing.com. And for podcast updates, join me on Instagram at Elements of Ayurveda Podcast. And before we begin, just a quick note to say that this podcast is for educational and inspirational purposes only. It's not intended as medical advice. Now let's dive into this episode. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. It's Colette today for a solo episode. And this episode is inspired by a pattern I've noticed over many years of working with clients. And one that, if I'm honest, I've experienced myself from time to time. It's what I call the gap between knowing and living Ayurveda. Because if you have been listening to the podcast for a while, chances are you already know quite a lot about Ayurveda. You know that drinking warm water is generally easier on the digestion than ice cold drinks. You know that eating regular meals supports digestion, that sleep is one of the 3 pillars of health, that a daily routine helps maintain balance, that spending time in nature can calm the mind, that slowing down and eating mindfully is beneficial. The question is not whether you know these things. The question is, are you consistently living them? And if not, why not? This isn't a judgment, it's a genuine question, because most of us don't struggle due to a lack of information. We struggle because information alone does not create transformation. And today I want to explore why. One of the most fascinating things about the modern world is that information has never been more accessible. At any moment, we can listen to a podcast, watch a video, read an article, download a book, take an online course, or ask AI a question. Knowledge is everywhere. In fact, most people do not have an information problem. They have an implementation problem. We know what supports our well-being and what doesn't. We know that scrolling on our phone until midnight does not improve our sleep, and that eating lunch at our desk while answering emails is not ideal for digestion. We know that constantly pushing through exhaustion is not sustainable, and yet we do it anyway. But why? Because knowing and doing are not the same thing. And this is where I think Ayurveda offers us great insight. Ayurveda was never intended to be merely intellectual knowledge. It was designed to be lived. It's the manual for life, and the principles are meant to be integrated into our daily life. The wisdom only becomes transformative when it moves from the head into the body. I think many people assume that if they just learn enough, eventually they'll change. But transformation rarely works that way. Think about learning to swim. You could read every book ever written about swimming, study the mechanics, understand the science, watch videos, memorize techniques, but until you get into the water, you're not actually swimming. The same is true with Ayurveda. You can understand dinacharya, the daily self-care practices. You can know the benefits of tongue scraping and oil pulling, know exactly what foods aggravate your unique constitution. But knowledge remains theoretical until it becomes practice. And practice requires action, consistency, patience, and perhaps most importantly, a willingness to be imperfect. What if the reason you're not doing the thing you know would help is not laziness at all? What if it's protection? From a nervous system perspective, many of our habits serve a purpose, even when they don't appear helpful on the surface. Scrolling on your phone late at night might be helping you forget your stressful day. Staying busy might be helping you avoid uncomfortable emotions that arise in moments of stillness. Reaching for sugar or comfort foods may be providing a temporary sense of safety or relief. Overworking may be helping you feel productive, valuable, or in control. When we begin to understand this, we stop seeing ourselves as broken or lacking discipline. Instead, we become curious, and we can ask ourselves, what need is this behavior trying to meet? That question changes everything because awareness is one of Ayurveda's greatest tools. The goal is not to judge ourselves for our habits. The goal is to understand them. And once we understand them, we can begin meeting those needs in healthier and more sustainable ways. This is something I've experienced myself over the years while building my business. As many of you know, I've been running my own small business for over 10 years. And like many small business owners, I've worn many hats, creating podcast episodes, client consultations, developing programs, managing marketing, answering emails, handling administration, and everything else that goes into running a business. There have certainly been times when I knew exactly what my body needed. I knew I needed more rest, more spaciousness in my schedule. I needed to step away from the computer and spend some time in nature. This is what I teach, and so knowledge was not missing. The challenge was living it. Because when you're passionate about your work and carrying the responsibility of doing everything yourself, it's very easy to convince yourself that you'll rest later, after this podcast recording, after this busy period. And yet what I've learned is that there's always another project, another goal, another responsibility. Life does not suddenly become empty and present us with the perfect moment to start taking care of ourselves. We have to choose it again and again. Not because we're trying to be perfect, but because we've experienced the difference it makes. I've learned that when I consistently honor my need for rest, everything benefits. My work improves, my clarity and intuition improves, my ability to support others improves because I've taken time out and I feel more balanced. Have you ever noticed how strange human beings can be? We resist the very things that would help us. We avoid going to bed earlier, postpone exercise, skip the practices that help us feel grounded, delay the self-care that we know leaves us feeling better. And then we wonder why we feel stuck. I think part of this resistance comes from how we approach change. We often try to overhaul our entire lives overnight. We create ambitious plans. We decide we're going to wake up at 5 a.m., meditate for 30 minutes, practice yoga daily, cook every meal from scratch, eliminate all unhealthy habits, and become a completely different person by next week. The nervous system hears this and quietly panics because it knows that this is not sustainable. Eventually, the plan collapses and we conclude that we've failed. But perhaps the problem wasn't us. Perhaps the problem was the approach. Ayurveda teaches us that we are a part of nature, and nature rarely transforms overnight. A seed becomes a tree through consistent nourishment over time. There's another aspect of this conversation that I think is worth exploring. Sometimes learning can become a substitute for doing. Now, please don't misunderstand me. Learning is valuable, education matters, curiosity is wonderful. But there comes a point where more information is no longer the missing piece. I've seen this in clients and I've caught myself doing it too. Listening to another podcast, reading another book, taking another course, searching for one more answer, one more strategy, one more piece of information that will somehow make everything click. But sometimes we're not actually looking for information. We're postponing action. Because learning feels productive, it feels safe, we can stay in the world of ideas without having to step into the discomfort of change. Meanwhile, the transformation we're seeking is often waiting in the practices we already know, not in another piece of information, but in the willingness to live what we have already learned. That can be a difficult realization because it means the next step is not necessarily learning more. The next step is doing something differently. This brings me to something I've been reflecting on a lot lately, the relationship between self-discipline and self-compassion. Many people believe transformation requires relentless discipline. And discipline certainly has value, consistency, commitment, and showing up matters. But discipline without compassion often leads to burnout. When we approach ourselves harshly, we create resistance. When we judge ourselves for every perceived failure, we make the process heavier than it needs to be. On the other hand, compassion without commitment can leave us feeling stuck. If we constantly excuse our behavior without taking action, nothing changes. What we need is both the structure of discipline and the gentleness of compassion, the commitment to keep showing up, and the understanding that growth is rarely linear and perfect. Some days you'll remember your practices, some days you'll forget. Some weeks you'll feel completely connected, some weeks life will feel chaotic. That's not failure, it's being human. Remember, the goal is not perfection, the goal is returning again and again. And that's why I recommend the 80-20 approach to my clients. It's realistic, sustainable, and allows room for life to happen, for spontaneity, celebrations, travel, and simple pleasures. The idea is that you follow Ayurvedic principles most of the time. That's the 80%, while giving yourself the flexibility to enjoy life without guilt or rigidity. What makes this approach work is the commitment to return. You don't abandon your healthy habits because you've had a late night, enjoyed a special meal, or fallen out of routine for a few days. You simply come back to the practices that help keep you grounded and support balance. I find this approach incredibly sustainable because it removes the pressure to be perfect. In fact, many people find they enjoy those occasional indulgences more fully, and afterwards they're genuinely ready to return to the routines and rituals that help them feel their best. One of the biggest shifts I see in clients happens when they stop asking, "What should I be doing?" and start asking, "How can I make this a part of my life?" It's a subtle difference, but it's an important shift in integrating Ayurveda. Because Ayurveda is not another project to complete or a challenge or performance. It's a way of living. When Ayurvedic practices become woven into your daily life, they stop feeling like effort. You brush your teeth without needing motivation. You don't debate whether you're going to do it each morning. It's simply part of your routine. The same can happen with Ayurvedic practices, one habit at a time. Eventually, the practices stop feeling like something you do. They become part of who you are. And that's when the real transformation begins. One of the greatest lessons Ayurveda has taught me is that small changes matter. In our culture, we're often attracted to dramatic transformations. We have a belief that in order for transformational change to happen, it has to be challenging and difficult. But Ayurveda has always taken a different approach. Ayurveda is interested in building ojas. Ojas is described as our vital essence. It's the subtle energy that supports resilience, immunity, vitality, emotional stability, and our ability to navigate life's challenges. And ojas is not built through extremes. It's built through nourishment, through consistency, and the small daily choices that support rather than deplete us. A regular bedtime, a nourishing meal, meaningful connection, time in nature, moments of stillness. One day may not seem significant, but over weeks, months, and years, these choices accumulate. They become the foundation of a more resilient, balanced, and vibrant life. Because transformation is rarely a single dramatic event. More often, it's the result of hundreds of small choices that accumulate over time. If there's one thing I'd like for you to take away from this episode, it's that you probably don't need more information. You likely already know many of the things that would support your well-being. The real question is, what's one thing you know that you're ready to start living? Not 10 things, not 20, just one. One small practice, one supportive habit, one act of self-care, one choice that brings your knowledge into action. Because Ayurveda is not about collecting more information. It's about creating a way of living that supports your unique nature. And transformation does not happen when we know better. It happens when we begin living differently, one small step at a time. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's one Ayurvedic practice you know would support you that you're ready to commit to? Come share it in the Elements of Ayurveda podcast community, or connect with me on social media. On Instagram, it's Elements of Ayurveda Podcast, and on Facebook, it's Elements Healing and Wellbeing. If you'd like support on your journey with Ayurveda and implementing the Ayurvedic principles, check out my online offerings on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. And if you have questions before booking, take advantage of my free 15-minute services inquiry call. We can hop on Zoom and discuss which of my services best suits your needs. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to the podcast so the new episodes automatically download for you. And if you'd like to leave a rating or review, I would really appreciate that. Until next time, take good care of yourself, be well, and bye for now. Slanga full.